Is it on?
Be afraid, which is interesting because I've missed most of it. I've been gone most of the weeks of it, so I don't even know what's been said. But I've been thinking a lot about it because it's actually the topic of courage. For those of you that don't know, my name's Zach. I do peacemaking work in different parts of the world, in conflict zones and places dealing with pain and conflict that sometimes I can't even say the name of because it makes us like don't want to talk about those topics. But so it was interesting reflecting like what would I talk about giving a sermon on fear and courage. I have a lot of thoughts. I have lots of things to share, but the first thing that popped into my head was actually just the people that I've been coming across who break everything that I usually think about for courage or about fear, and how I would approach it. But when I say that, I think about I'm regularly around people who are not sure how many days they have left. I work with Afghans who at any moment the Taliban could find them. That could be the last text I get from them. I regularly I just started working with people in Papua New Guinea in the highlands, and there's murder and all sorts of things I won't mention happening up there daily. Like within every week, there's more people dying, and I'm sitting with these people, including those who are doing the killing, and I'm having a lot of reflections about fear and courage, and also thinking about the people that I see as my heroes in courage, the ones that have really blown me away are not, they're not gonna have any Marvel movies made about them, or they're not adrenaline junkies. Most of them are women who have lost everything that is precious to them and are still trying to hold their families together. Most of them are very poor, and it's really interesting to see them as like my heroes of courage, because you typically would not think of those people. I don't know who you think of as courageous people. You normally think of these superheroes that come in to face all the risk, but I watch these like young Afghan girls and my friends who are refugees, and I just see this like deep courage. They are not afraid of anything. They don't even have anything in their wallet, and they're not afraid about tomorrow. They have something that I don't know how to put words to, but they just blow me away as being people that are not consumed by fear. I know that's hard to believe, maybe, but I hope I can introduce you to some of my friends. But I see it all the time. I see these people that, in every measurement, we would think should be terrified and afraid, and they're living in the worst conditions possible, and yet they are actually some of the most free people I know, and the most loving and generous and kind. And there's something there that starts my reflections for this sharing with you guys, and I'm just thinking, man, there's a blessing that comes, like, Jesus says, blessed are the poor, blessed are those who mourn, and it's like, those are exactly the things most people are afraid of. They're afraid to be poor, they're afraid to be grieving, they're afraid to, but it's like, that's where Jesus is like, actually, these people have the blessing. They have something you can't have when you are rich and when you have control. And I don't know how many of you guys either have actually had a moment when your bank account was at zero. I mean, I guess some of us maybe have it at negative, but I remember one time I was at that point, and I thought, that's like terrifying. Like, if I'm really out on a limb. I have nothing. Usually we use money in our culture for control. I have no control. When I have no money, I have no control. And yet, I remember one time being in that space and feeling this incredible release of like joy and freedom, of like, I can't control anything. And actually, I had a joy that came over me that I can't explain. It didn't. So funny how terrified you are when you think about that hypothetically, but when you actually are in that space, there's something of letting go of control that actually frees us from our fears. Not always. I'm not saying an empty bank account is always nice, but yeah. Does anyone resonate with these things? It's like sometimes we even have nostalgia about the times when we were really struggling, and like there's this like, remember that when back when we had only this much, and but it's so interesting how our fears are so terrified of that moment. Don't ever want to be in that situation, or we're so. Anyways, are you guys with me? I think one thing that I've been noticing is that like courage is not always loud and dramatic, and sometimes the most courageous acts are to just stay in a situation and keep going. And I see that with so many people that I work with. I have one friend that he risks his life regularly to save women and children because they've been accused of sorcery. Which is, I know that sounds crazy that still happens in our world, but we had like the Salem witch trials and all that, but it's very real. And this guy is just, with very little means, him and his family save, rescue, and like look after these little children and the women that they can rescue from this quite horrible situation. And I just think about that. It's not glamorous. It doesn't have any music attached to it when he does this. It's actually quite scary, and it's also quite difficult financially. And to just see the courage that is really impacting our world is often just a quiet courage of continuing to hold on and like love and care no matter what comes. Yeah, I'm just reflecting on these things as I start. And I had two stories come to mind from the Bible that I wanted to share with you guys that I feel like I've always struggled to understand the importance of. And I hope I do honor to these people. I've been thinking about how these are actually people. They're not just illustrations for a sermon, you know? Sometimes we like characterize people in the Bible like they're just a metaphor of some sort or something to consider, but these are actually people, and I hope I do honor to them because they seem to be quite honorable. But I want to ask you this question: what is the one story that Jesus says must be told everywhere the good news is told? There's only one time Jesus says everywhere this good news is preached, talk about this. And it's not about Lazarus. You think that would be pretty good. I raised people from the dead. No, doesn't say it. Do you guys know what's the one story? I was in, what's that? Not the widow? No? Yeah, the woman with the perfume. It's in the next slide. I never understood this because I was like doing missions, and I meet with people all the time that want to go and tell the good news around the world, but we very rarely, I don't know, I never grew up being taught that this must be told every time you tell the good news. That's Jesus' command. If you're going to talk about me, talk about this woman. That's what Jesus is like saying, and I'm like, what? I don't really get it. Yeah, that's great. She poured out perfume, but what? Why is this the moment that Jesus goes, you know what? Out of all the stories, of all the things I've done, out of all the people I've met, this is the one. Tell everyone, make sure that truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. It's really amazing, and I think it's worth our attention when we think about courage, because what she did obviously faced a lot of potential fear. Like, she's risking, in this culture, I don't know exactly what it means for a woman to come in and then just start to pour perfume on a man, but I think it's quite risky. what she was doing is quite unorthodox, and also she obviously went into that room knowing this could go a lot of different directions, and yet she did it even though she might have been afraid. Which is I keep saying that courage word because it's not a lack of fear, it's even though you're afraid, you still do something. And just as a side note, in psychology and psychiatry, across all studies, there's not many times that they could say there's a particular therapy that is consistently measured to work. It's pretty rare. There's all different theories and different scientists that are different people trying to do different ways to heal people. But one that is actually pretty consistent throughout almost every field of study is called exposure therapy, which is where whatever you're afraid of, you voluntarily expose yourself to. So if you have a big fear of spiders, then that they would recommend, so I mean, obviously they're doctors, they have ways of doing this, but the tests have shown that when someone voluntarily puts a spider on their hand, hopefully not an Australian spider, because it's a lot higher risk, a lot more fear of being faced. But what's interesting is even if that person doesn't calm themselves, even if they're freaking out the entire time, they will see a breakthrough in not just the fear that they faced, but in multiple other areas of their life where fear is driving them. And I remember reading studies about women who would do this, and their family would right away start to say, stop doing this therapy, we don't like this therapy. And the reason was, say she put a spider on her hand during therapy, that was such a profound moment of courage, it's contagious into other parts of your life. And so she would go home, and for the first time maybe in 20 years, she would tell her husband no. And her husband went, we need to stop this therapy, because it's suddenly there's an ability to face fears in multiple other areas of our lives. I think that's really good news to us, that facing even a small fear is actually potentially going to be a helpful thing to break through in other areas. But back to this lady, what's really interesting for this is she wasn't asking for anything, which is really, everyone's coming to Jesus for something. Everyone. You just read the stories. I want to be healed, I want to hear your teaching, I want this question answered, on and on and on. We want food, I don't know, we want you to be king. But isn't it interesting that she poured out this perfume and she wasn't even asking anything? It's just a pure gift. I think that's what caught Jesus' attention, because what she poured out was worth about a year's worth of wages, and it's for a woman to have that kind of money. Either she's a rich woman, even then, it doesn't say that she is, but this would be potentially her dowry, which is all of her savings for a plan B if things go wrong. She'd have something to fall back on. And for no reason at all, just purely as a gift, she pours out her entire future savings and everything, all of her backup plans. For what? She wasn't doing it so then Jesus would do something. It just really messes with me. I hope this story is piercing you as well. It's what was she doing this for? And how could she have the courage to pour out all of her life savings, pour out and you have to give it all. Once you break the jar open, it's just fully poured out. And how could she be in that place? I just don't know many people that would do something like that, so free from fear. And there's obviously something going on in her that there's something more powerful than her fears driving her to do this act of love. And another thought I had with that was that I wonder if she was one of the people that had been around Jesus for the last several months in the story. Jesus has been saying, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. And you know, nobody would listen to him. Even his own disciples are like, a few days later, like, Peter's like, I'll never let it happen. You know, he's just totally in denial, even though Jesus has been saying it over and over. I wonder if she was the only one that actually got it, because what she did, then Jesus says, she did this to anoint me for my burial. And I wonder if that was something that she was motivated by, was an acceptance that I know you're gonna die, but I want to give this gift before, which is something they would do for like a loved one, a close family member. Only wealthy people would do that, but it's just really interesting, this story, and going, why would Jesus say this is the one story? Everywhere you talk about Jesus, you should talk about this woman who gave everything. She emptied her bank account, risked all of her reputation for the rest of her life, and the people scorned her. When you read the verse, you'll realize she got people, all the men just started scolding her. Why did you waste all that money? It could have gone to the poor, and they on and on. And the next verse after this one is Judas then goes to betray Jesus. When Jesus honors this woman for what she did, Judas goes, you know what, I'm out. I'm gonna go get the money, get the silver. And this was so offensive to Judas and to the others, that why would you pour out all that money? Why would you waste it all? And Jesus actually flips it and makes her the most honorable in the room. Anyways, that was one reflection I had of courage. The other one is also a Mary. There's lots of Marys around Jesus. Mary Magdalene, along with so many, well, not so many, only a few. There's Mary, his mother, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and then a lady Salome, and then I forget if there's another, but I can't remember. And then John are the only ones, is it up there? Yeah. Near the cross, oh, there you go. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. And then there's other versions that include John and a lady Salome. And I just think about this, like, what on earth would drive women to show up, to want to be at an execution that is as violent and horrible as that, at a risk of Roman soldiers who could literally do anything at any time at their own whim, pretty much. It could turn against them very rapidly, and at a risk of being considered a criminal, because all of his disciples, all the guys who watched him raise the dead, heal the sick, cast out demons for years, they've been with him for 3 years, they all are hiding away. They ran away and are hiding. What would drive these women and John to publicly stay with Jesus at the cross? I know I talked about this in a previous sermon, but I just still cannot get over what would have driven these people to that. And it's a quiet courage. It's so quiet that we don't even really know their names that well. I don't know why. I feel guilty that I don't know these people's names, because like, how much greater of a gift has anyone ever given to Jesus, even in all of our history since, than these people who stood by him, knowing they couldn't get him off the cross. They still stayed and watched. They didn't turn away from his suffering. I just keep thinking about these things, going, what on earth could drive you to that kind of love, to where even against all your rational mindset of saving yourself and thinking what's in the best outcome for me, it's probably not to stand by these crosses at such a pivotal moment when everything's going crazy. And yet these people stayed and didn't leave Jesus' side. Is this dying? Okay. What's amazing about this is also that Mary Magdalene, who is known for being healed of 7 demons or something from Jesus, she has followed along all this journey. She stays at the cross, and then she is the first person to see him resurrect on in the garden. And again, where are all of his strong and mighty apostles, the ones that we do know their names, the ones that we talk about all the time? Where are they? They're hiding in a room. Grown men who have seen every kind of miracle possible are hiding afraid in a room. And Mary Magdalene somehow has this courage to come. And what does she come with? A bunch of perfume and spices, again, to pour out on a body that is dead. Like, she's still giving, her as well as the others have like given all this perfume and spices, which is so expensive, to a body that is gone. It's not for any profit. It's not so that you can get something from it. It's just purely an act of love, a gift of love. And when I think about these things, I see this in my friends that I've been working with, especially my Afghan friends, but I see it all over the world. These people that they're gonna face danger every day. And their choice is, am I gonna face danger out of selfishness or out of love? Like, that's kind of the choice presented to them. Like, well, I might die anyway, so I might as well die for love and die for peace. That's what some of my friends are deciding when I work with them. They're risking their lives to try and make peace with the other tribe that's been attacking them. Because they're already at this stage of, well, I'm all in. I have nothing else to lose. I'd rather die working for peace, working for love. And how beautiful that is, as much as it's such a brutal situation. I see this beauty of these, talk about a brutal situation. This is as brutal as it gets. Jesus being crucified, and yet these women are the heroes of love that broke through, and they weren't shouted from the rooftops, they weren't taken on the Romans, they were just persistent in loving no matter what situation came. And that, I think there's something sitting there for us of like, neither woman's story is about adrenaline, self-confidence, or denial of risk. You know? Neither one is about adrenaline, self-confidence, or denial of risk. It's actually knowing the risk without, I don't know how much adrenaline they had, but it doesn't mention them being all pumped up for hours. Like, they had a courage to face death out of real friendship and love. And I think love is really one of the greatest places to gain courage in your life. And one of the greatest messages of Jesus in the whole gospel is that this many times it says, do not be afraid. And we are no longer slaves to fear. A slave is someone who has to do what the master says, right? So if you're a slave to fear, it means you have no choice. You are going to do whatever your fear tells you, or you're going to not do whatever your fear tells you. It's, I think so much of my life is actually already decided by not driving down that way or not going this direction. I just have already decided that without even knowing it, because my fear says that's not a good option. But for us, we have this option, our opportunity of breakthrough, that we are no longer to be slaves of fear. Fear is fine. It's actually good for us, some of it. We're created with it, that you're afraid of walking off a cliff so you don't go close. That's like totally healthy, good. But it's when your fear no longer allows you the freedom to choose, that your fear is the driver, in the driver's seat. And I think what these women are showing and what is offered to us in Jesus is a life that is free from fear and will even face risks for the sake of something greater. And so I'm not sure how am I doing with time. Yeah, I got some time. What I've been doing in a lot of the work that I do, I started this thing called, I don't mean like started, like I don't take full credit for it, but we started this thing called Communities of Courage, because one of the biggest things that people are facing, especially in war zones or in places like Afghanistan, is fear. It's like the main commodity that gets traded around, and guns are very helpful in making sure fear drives an outcome. But I started meeting with Afghans, and I've done it with many different places around the world, many different people. And we call it communities of courage. And it's so simple, you might think it's stupid, but it's really changed my life and changed many people's lives that I've seen as we do it together. And I encourage you to do this week if you are up for it. All it is in a group. You don't have to do it in a group, but this is what we do when we do it. I did it with a bunch of Afghan boys, like high school to university age. They're currently under the Taliban. Every year of their life has been war. They've never known a day of peace. Actually, anyone up to like 40 years old in Afghanistan has never known what a day of peace. And we sat together, and I thought I knew what fears would come up, but because you think, I'm guessing you're afraid of this and that. But when we started to share, the first thing we do is we share with each other everything we're afraid of. And if you don't want to do this with other people, just write it down. Write down everything you're afraid of this week. Any fear that comes up, anything that you're like, I'm afraid of this happening, I'm afraid of that. So we would do that. We shared with each other, and it was so interesting sometimes because I thought I knew what these guys would say, and then this 13-year-old boy gets up I was doing this on Zoom, and he says, I'm afraid of girls. And then everyone breaks up laughing because we're all like, yeah, we know what you're talking about. and that's a healthy fear. But it's just interesting, when we are actually honest enough with ourselves to actually say, what am I actually afraid of? Because so much of the problems in our life are actually probably driven by our own fears. But instead of solving each other's fears or telling that boy, well, you don't need to be afraid of girls, we just share it all with each other, humble ourselves and share everything that I'm afraid of. Then we just lift that up, hold our hands up and lift it up to God and say, God, is there anything you want me to know about this? And we leave a bit of time, a minute or two of silence. And then we just start sharing with each other if there's anything that we see differently from that. And then the next week, we all try to do something courageous, whatever it is, whatever fear you need to face. And then we come back and share with each other, what did you do did you do something courageous this week? And we share, and then we do the same process again. It's not a very emotional process, it's not a very exciting process, but what was crazy for me was 3 weeks later, I was different. And then as I talked with them, I was like, they were finding that they were different, and some of the fears we started with weren't even on the list anymore, which was really crazy to me because my fear when I started was I realized I'm afraid of failing my children, which is not a fear I expected to just go away very quickly. I don't know about you, but I was like, man, I'm afraid of failing my kids, and I don't know if I'm being a good father or not. And what was crazy was 3-4 weeks later, that wasn't on my list. And I didn't even know when it got off the list at all. But I was amazed at what happened through speaking out, what is my fear, and then actually bringing it to God and asking Him to bring perspective. I suddenly found a month later that I am not being driven by that fear. And so I just encourage you guys throughout your week, and whenever you want to do this, so you can do it anytime, anywhere, I encourage you to try this out and see what happens in your own life where fears are constantly pestering you and driving you and controlling you. Maybe this process might open up a new day for breaking out of that fear and having courage. So I think that's all I have to say for this. I hope that my friends' stories that I'm sharing from around the world are speaking to us. I feel like they are preaching to us more than anything I've done to them. But also, I think these women have something to say to us, and they're not just nice stories. There's something really incredible that happened. It's very rare that somebody surprises Jesus, and it's only once that He says, this needs to be told everywhere. And so I think I would love to pray for that to sink in for us, to think about what about my life and where do I fit in this story. And so I'll just pray. Thank you, Father, for your great, courageous approach to us, that you are not driven by fear, but you are full of love. Help us to be more like you, that we would be people of courage that bring love into this world and are not slaves to fear and acting out of that fear in violence and in manipulation and all the things that fear drives us to, wanting to control. But God, I pray these stories and this time would really open us up to be full of something greater than our fears, that we would have a love that is greater than our fears, and we would be free to decide each day which way we go. And we need your help with that. It's not something we can muster on our own, but we invite you to move in us, move among us wherever we've been stuck in fear, where we are absolutely controlled by our fear. We feel we have no choice. God, I pray you'd help us break free and do it together in blessing each other and blessing the world. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
We're going to finish off our service